recording now, and it's all yours. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So I'm sorry, am I being interviewed or?
I'm not sure. Ron set this up, so I'm not sure exactly what he was planning. I thought he's in here, but I can't seem to connect to him.
Well, you can cut this part out.
Okay.
Okay, I can. I'm more than happy to talk about the Banneker-Douglass Museum and the work we're doing around anti-racism, when we're going to reopen to the public, our virtual programs. And being that this is a small group, I'm totally open to answer any questions about the museum and also about the commission that operates the museum. So I can just dive right in. Well, my name is Chanel Compton, and I'm the executive director of the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture and the Banneker-Douglass Museum, your state museum on African American history and culture. So a little bit of background history. The Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture is the nation's first state ethnic commission. It was legislated in 1969, a year after King's assassination, and was actually a response to the social unrest that had occurred after King's assassination. So Verda Welcome, along with Benjamin Quarles, who's a famed Morgan State University professor of African American Studies, developed the legislation which passed to start the nation's first state ethnic commission. And the greater vision for the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture is that how can you really hate someone if you know their history? How can you really feel disempowered if you know that you stand on the shoulders of greats? So the start of the commission, it's over 50 years, came out of an act of social justice. So later on, the commission, one of their first larger projects was to save Mount Moriah Church, which would open as the Banneker-Douglass Museum. And Mount Moriah was an African-American, it was an AME church built in 1874. And the Anne Arundel County wanted to tear it down to make a parking lot. And so that was a huge uproar, because at the time that church was the Black cultural epicenter for Annapolis. So the commission, along with community leaders, they picketed, they started the Save Mount Moriah campaign. They saved Mount Moriah. It's now listed as a on the National Historic Registrar. And it's also an Underground Railroad Network for Freedom site. And because of that, because it was placed on the National Registry for preservation, the county couldn't tear it down. So the commission already had this large African-American collection of Black history in Maryland. And so what was the church was the perfect repository for that collection. The congregation of Mount Moriah had moved to another facility. They actually originally sold the facility to the county because they had outgrown the church, not knowing that the county was going to tear it down. So thankfully, because of the work of the commission and the community leadership, we have our state's museum. It's really, really important to note that the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture is the only African American museum state commission to operate a museum as well as a capital grant. So in partnership with the Maryland Historical Trust, annually there is a $1 million capital grant that is awarded to African-American heritage sites, be it historic schoolhouses, churches, museums, historic homes. So if you wanted to apply, the application is due July 1st. You can go on MHT's website, or you can go on the Commission's website at africanamerican.maryland.gov to learn more about this grant program. Because it's an excellent program. So yeah, that's really important to know. It's historic. It's work at an act of passion, but it's equally as fantastic that I had the opportunity to not only empower the Banneker-Douglass Museum, but also be a support to African-American heritage sites and projects throughout the state. So it's an incredible place to work. So COVID-19. So since the governor declared a state of emergency, the museum has been closed since March 2020, and we are slated to open in September 2021, so early fall. And since then, we have a small but mighty staff at the Banneker-Douglass Museum. We typically would do, when we were open to the public, it's a beautiful facility, right? It's about over 11,000 square feet. You have your historic wing, Mount Moriah, you have our modern wing. We would do daily tours, programs, great exhibitions. So we were devastated. Of course, we were afraid, like many of us were at the time, because we didn't know what was happening. And also we kind of knew early on that, though none of us were experts in this virtual realm as we are today, we knew that we needed to make a pivot to do online programming. And being a Black museum and being founded with the spirit of social justice, as most Black museums are, we knew we couldn't be a neutral space when it came to the Black Lives Matter movement, issues of police brutality, systemic racism, and also community wellness, because COVID-19 was disproportionately impacting Black communities. So we leveraged partnerships with the University of Maryland Medical Center. We leveraged a partnership with the Maryland Commission, the Maryland Lynching Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and a number of other partners to build dialogue, to develop virtual programs around real topics that were impacting so many people. Another thing is important to note that though we are a state agency, people have this assumption like, oh, you guys have, you guys don't have to worry about fundraising, right? And that's not true, because we were impacted by a state spending freeze, right? We were, we have a fiscal sponsor, the Banneker-Douglass Museum Foundation, which is a private nonprofit. So that's an arm that really works with myself and with the commission to help, fundraise and meet those budgetary gaps. Well, they really kicked into high gear during COVID. We knew that we needed funds, we needed support, we needed to leverage the surrounding Annapolis community, because we knew that in order to do impactful programming, we have to have resources. We needed partnerships. So as a repository for African-American history and culture, we knew that we is standing on the shoulders of greats such as Berta Welcome, Benjamin Quarles, and the many others that laid the foundation for what is now the Banneker-Douglass Museum and the Commission. We knew that we had to carry the baton and be a hub and resource for social change. So with that being said, we launched the 2021 anti-racism campaign to raise funds to onboard much needed staff, and also to fund our virtual programs, namely our anti-racism coalition and training series. We did. We didn't raise all of it. We have an $80,000 goal. So far, we raised $62,000, and we were able to onboard a curator of collections, and we're still raising funds to keep her there at the Banneker-Douglass Museum, as well as to fund our anti-racism coalition and training series. So, and it's starting, like the ball is rolling. The anti-racism coalition is made up of educators, anti-racism experts, artists, young people, to help our program staff, which is one person. Her name is Sabria Hassan. She's our programs director, develop a anti-racism training series. And the point of that series is to really dive into the history of structural racism against Black people in America. And our inaugural program will be April 20th. That's next week. It is free to the public. Please register because it's filling up quick, but it will also be live streamed on Facebook. And so the speakers are Dr. Dresden Lackey. She is a PhD candidate of sociology at Georgia State University, and her primary research is on microaggressions, gendered racism, health disparities, social problems, and urbanization. The next speaker is homegrown. His name is Dr. David Leon Reed. He holds a bachelor's degree at Morgan State University, and he's the assistant professor of history of secondary education in the Department of History and Government at Bowie State University. I love the fact that he went to Bowie and he teaches at Bowie, and an adjunct lecturer at Howard University. Some of the topics that they'll be covering is the historic foundations of structural racism. And the second session will be critical race theory. Critical race theory is both a paradigm and a practice that challenges dominant systems on race, racism, and equality. This session will examine the legalities of racism, how and why practices and policies were and are created, and whom they ultimately serve. I think it's really important to note that in order to, and a lot of people are like, well, what is an anti-racism? You know, what does that even mean? And I think a lot of people are kind of like, just how people are zoomed out. If you're in the African-American cultural sector, you're probably like, at this point, the term racial equity may be white noise, no pun intended, meaning you hear it so often that it almost, sometimes it can lose meaning. But what we're really trying to push for is that if you're going to be a champion for change, you need to really understand and be able to interpret the historic foundations of structural racism against Black people. I mean, that is critical. And in understanding that, you'll start to make decisions championing our elected officials and the policies, and reading between the lines of policies that either promote racial equity or disenfranchises others. So that's really something that we're pushing for within these discussions. And it's a challenging time. I'm agitated every day, but I'm also inspired every day by the work that so many people are doing, and so many connections that are being made through this work. So yeah. And I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I'll be happy to open the floor if anyone has any questions, or I can just keep talking about some of the things that we're working at the museum in 2021. I see some folks in the room.
If anybody has any questions, feel free to chime in.
And my pronoun is she, her. I see you, Caroline O'Donnell. Yes, love that.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry. Well, cool. Yes, pronouns, good, important. I want to say thank you. I saw this on the Banneker-Douglass Museum or social media. And I just want to say thank you. This is really cool. I definitely I had a question and I definitely should have written it down because it has gone out of my head.
It is
Oh,
awesome.
sorry. So when you mentioned that the church, like the building in which the museum is currently, it was a stop on the Underground Railroad. How, because I went to another talk and like the difficulties of trying to retrace the steps, like the documentation that we think, it's not paper, typically it's oral histories, and sometimes that dies with someone. I was just curious how, kind of the if you could talk more on maybe the build history, and I'm sorry if this is on the websites.
So it's a little, it's not as, so Mount Moriah, and from my understanding, now I'll probably get a phone call tomorrow from like a longtime resident of Annapolis to say that's not true, Chanel, but from my understanding, the church was built in 1874 after the emancipation of African Americans in Maryland. And so that same congregation, of course, some of which were freed African Americans, and some of which were at one time enslaved. So I don't believe it was an actual location or a direct within the direct network of the Underground Railroad, but it's named an Underground Network Freedom Site because of the descendants of who founded the location and the types of programming that's involved with the museum.
That's so
I
cool.
hope I answered the question. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, that I kind of that was me pulling my question from the top of my head, but thank you. That was cool. Do you, I'm just
helpful.
watching.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. Do you mind talking about how you got interested in like African American museums and history, or like how you, when you chose this job, like what drew you to it, if you don't mind?
Well, that's a really good question. So basically, my background is in fine arts. I went to school at Mason Gross School of the Arts and at Rutgers University, and my concentration was in painting. It was really, I loved the friendships that I made at Mason Gross School of the Arts, really at Rutgers University. But it was a tough program because I was the only one of the very few people of color in the program. So that was rough. But I still, am still very passionate about art making and all of the things. And so I moved to Washington, D.C. Right after school. When I graduated with the BFA, I did that whole thing going abroad and, backpacking and figuring it out and roughing it and all. I'm still kind of roughing it, but and all of that, trying to kind of figure things out. And so I knew even during my undergrad experience that I had a desire to use art and culture to like connect people, like doing community programs and youth programming. Like I've always been kind of like really, really attracted to that, or, drawn to that. So I did a little bit of that in my undergrad. And so after, so when I post-grad, I moved to the DC area, started waiting tables and meeting other artists. And that's when I really started doing a lot of public art, a lot of community projects. And I loved it. I enrolled in the arts management program at American University, where I got my master's degree there in arts management. And that was really great because it really teaches you, pretty much how to run a nonprofit, because at the end of the day, a nonprofit is a business. So learning about business operations, the fundamentals of fundraising, marketing, outreach, all of the board governance, all of the things that the fundamentals of running a nonprofit. I started working, my first job out of my master's program was at the Prince George's African American Museum, a amazing organization in Prince George's County, and I was their education coordinator. And I really, long story short, everything that I learned in community arts in the DC area, all the connections that I made, and this is really, and this is something for all y'all young people out there, or even if you're starting a new career later in life, which is all good. Bring everything, bring your interests to work. That is so important. Like, just bring it all, bring the whole toolbox, because that's what keeps the fire in your belly. And that love and commitment shows up in your work, So I did that, and I built their education outreach programs from the ground up. We had from very small to really big, a really great partnership with Prince George's County Public Schools, where we were now doing their after school programming and, youth conferences and all of that. And it was great. It was fantastic. I then went on to be the education director at the Creative Alliance for a time, which was really fantastic. It's an arts organization, visual and performing arts organization in Baltimore City. And they're really just a mammoth of an organization. It was really great to work there. I got to, my office was right next door to Amy Sherrill's studio. She's the amazing painter who did the portrait of Michelle Obama. I know, she's incredible. So she was really nice, and just like, this is before Michelle Obama. So she was just like trying to make it just like everybody else. And I remember I would spend so many late hours at the Creative Alliance because I was so passionate about the work there. I was literally running their after school programs. And at the time, I really didn't have that much staff support. So I worked long hours, and she would come over and say, "Are you okay?" And one time she gave me some food, and it was she was just a doll. And we had some really great conversations. I definitely cried on her shoulder a couple times because it was some rough stuff going on. But yeah, so then after that, I was recruited. Remember, I used to work at the Prince George's Museum. The board was looking for an executive director. And so they asked if I told them I was interested, and unanimously they brought me back. So that was really great. So I got to serve as the executive director for that museum for a stint until I was recruited. Now, some people were like, why did you leave the Prince George's Museum for the Banneker-Douglass Museum? I was recruited, I promise. I didn't ask for the job. I was looking because I love working at the Prince George's Museum. I did a presentation for the Maryland Commission on African American History and Culture at their public meeting on behalf of the Prince George's Museum. The chair and vice chair at the time came to visit me at the Prince George's Museum, and I gave them a tour, thinking, it's just an introduction meeting, and they offered me the job. And so I had to really think about it, because I'm like, what am I getting myself into? Am I ready? Am I ready? And a lot of times as women, we think about that. We consider that like, oh, if I don't hit all the check boxes, then no. But I had to think about, this is bigger than me, because if I was working at a county level, if I can work at a state level, I can bring my tribe with me. You know what I mean? Like I could be more of a support and network to other Black organizations, which is something that I've always been passionate about. So they'll tell you that the reason why they brought me on is because they wanted to have more of a focus on fundraising, more of a focus on creative programming, arts programming. They wanted to have more of a focus on programming that was socially and culturally relevant. So I was like, okay, and I will say that it's been about 3 years since I've been at the Banneker-Douglass Museum and serving as the executive director for the commission. I would say, like, it has been an incredible experience. It's been tremendously humbling and incredibly empowering, because the amount of support that I get from the commission has just made me into such a better administrator, such a better leader, and I would even say such a better person. because if you're going to be in this position, in any leadership position, you have to be a good listener. You have to be vulnerable. You have to be vulnerable enough to say, I don't know this, and I need help, and that's okay. You have to listen to your staff. It's been incredible. You have to listen to your community. There's times where sometimes people get into these leadership positions and they're like, I'm the expert on this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. That's great. It's good to have directive and to know what you're doing. That's important, but it's also good to really have your pulse on the people that are around you, and to make sure that people are included in building a spirit of collaboration, because that's what's going to keep things sustainable. And yeah, it's been a great ride. So do I have a PhD in history? No, I don't. I don't have a PhD in history, but I have a passion, but I'm a historian in my own right. You don't have to have a PhD in history to be a historian or an expert in something that you're passionate in, right? And I will say this, I still practice art. I still do public art. I still get contracted for stuff. Everything that I learn at my job working at a Black museum is transferred over into my studio practice, like concepts. So everything kind of feeds into one another. So it's been fantastic. And I haven't talked about this in so long. So thank you so much, Carolyn, for asking that question, because it was like a walk down memory lane for sure. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing all of that. It's really, I'm saying all of that like it's dismissive and how this is recorded, but thank you very much for sharing and talking about your career journey as well as a personal journey. And that's really cool. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I'm going to take my face off now because I'm going to.
It's all good.
All right. Okay, I do have a quick question, and again, this is kind of directed more towards young people. I teach in a middle school in Baltimore, and one of the things in the county is that we've really began a conversation on, especially the last few years, is the idea of dealing with implicit bias. It's that unconscious, subconscious bias, but unfortunately, many people equate that to implicit racism. And the one thing we're trying to do is we're trying to show that there are two different things. I have read several books to include Kennedy's book called Stamped, and then we've also read. I've done a book study on Zarita Hammond's culturally relevant teaching. And I'm just curious, what kind of programs does the museum offer for students, educators, that kind of thing, to, maybe discuss those type of things as well?
I mean, I think definitely a good start would be the training on April 20th. I don't know for you said middle school students?
Yes, ma'am.
They could tune in, they can definitely tune in, but I don't know if it's catered, if that particular training is catered to people. I don't know if they'll be engaged for the full 2 hours as a middle schooler. What type of programs? I mean, the best thing to do is to give me your contact information and I'll put you in contact with our programs director. This is the early stages of the training. And I'm thinking out loud, and the programs, folks that I work with hate when I do this, you know what I mean? Because I like put people on the spot. But I think it would be an interesting addition for one of the trainings just to be geared to young people. So I think maybe Richard, if you give me your contact information, I can get the, conversation started with our incredible programs director, Sabria Hassan, to see if we can get that going, or, what that could look like for the future. But yeah, I think that because we do teacher trainings for sure, but having a training specifically for young people, I think would definitely meet another community need, you know. So yeah. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I think we'll continue the conversation.
Well, I mean, even teacher training, I think it is important, because, like I said, I teach at a predominantly African American school. We're about 95% African American.
Yeah.
But that
What
being
school do you
said,
teach at? Do you mind saying what school?
Windsor Mill Middle School. It's just
Okay.
outside of the city. So we're actually
Okay.
part of the county, not the city.
Okay.
And so, I mean, in the county, there aren't very many African American history classes available. Matter of fact, there's only one that is not even required at the high school level. So I always try, as a social studies history teacher, to infuse it every day, and because I think it's important to do it rather than just you can do the celebration in February during Black History Month, but I think we should be discussing it every day. And sometimes my students I get into some serious discussions about racism, and the one thing I do is I have a very open class, so I discuss it openly with my kids like they do to me, because I want to be very honest with them. I grew up in a small Pennsylvania town which had, I think, one African American family, and that was it. So my experience was limited until I was a little bit older and moved down south, and then joined the Army. And of course, all that changes your whole attitude towards people in general. Getting away from a little small town. So I'm very honest at how my family is versus how I am, et cetera, et cetera. So I like to take moments to immerse them in African American history, because I don't think they're really getting it much anywhere else.
Right.
But I also want, because I'm teaching sixth grade this year, I also want them to have a voice, because that's something they don't usually get to do in classes, have a voice about how they feel about things. And of course, with the recent events, I mean, I have no problem opening those up for discussion, because I know it weighs on our students, and they may not say it, but I can tell they do. And I want to give them a chance to talk about it. I mean, I'm not sure how long Minnesota is going to stay in our nation at this rate. If they keep doing what they're doing, we might have to kick them out, let them be their own country, because of what's going on there. But I want to try to immerse them. Yeah. Well, oh yeah, definitely. So I don't know. I just want to give them more opportunities to really not only look at the bad stuff, but like, especially during Black History Month, I try to focus on African Americans who they aren't used to hearing about, and celebrations of what has been done, not necessarily what's happened. Because again, they'll get enough civil rights movement stuff, they'll get enough slavery stuff, but I also want to use the time to celebrate those who many have never even heard about. Yeah. And that's why I really want to try to get as much as that out there. And with all the museums closing, I had funding so I could send all my kids for free to the museum in DC, and then COVID-19 hit, and that took care of that. We were able to squeeze in a Harriet Tubman, the new Harriet Tubman Museum, right before that hit, so that was nice to do. But I like to just get as much exposure as I can for my students. So I thought, well, this might be a good opportunity to do that. So thank you very much.
Yeah, you said all the good things, right? I mean, teaching, and clearly I'm preaching to the choir, is a revolutionary act, and so I love what you said. Well, first of all, kids are already having these conversations. I mean, they're having these conversations. Like, they see what's going on. They're online. When we were young kids, we remember certain instances that was going on in social unrest. Like, I remember, the the LA riots. Like I was there, but I knew it was all encompassing. Imagine these children are at school 8+ hours a day, right? If it was normalized where these academic spaces fostered and responsibly facilitated conversations around racism, around giving them the tools on how to dismantle structural racism and to unpack and really critically look at what is going on in the world around them. I mean, that is incredibly empowering, like incredibly empowering. And a lot of teachers, I don't want to say a lot of teachers, but some of the educators that I've ran across, I mean, for the most part, you do need training, like, you know, unless you kind of grew up with it and that was kind of like a part of your, either your upbringing or your professional work or both. Some people may not have, I would say most of us don't have the vernacular to facilitate conversations around racism, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, you know, you had mentioned some of the books that you were reading, but there are books, and you probably already know this, but for the sake of we're on Zoom and this is public, there are books such as Stamped, I believe Stamped, and definitely How to Be a Racist. There are the kids versions for that. And so there are so many resources for young students that you can get just offline to help meet them where they're at. And I don't want to do it like that in like a patronizing way, but you know, that isn't too academic and engaging enough to give them the tools to think responsibly and to talk responsibly with their peers, with their families, and at their schools. So,
all right. Well, yeah. we're actually our county, our social studies county in the county is going to be purchasing the book Stamped, which is more of a kids level, not children, but kids level book. It's going to be purchased for every 8th grader in the county. And then it's going to be built into our curriculum. And I think that is absolutely great and fantastic.
That is awesome.
We're going to do that. So yeah, I know I'm pretty excited about that. But at the same time, I don't necessarily want kids to wait to 8th grade to have those conversations. So I certainly want to start them out at 6th grade and 7th grade, et cetera.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's really kind of where I've been, you know, and again, the idea of having, you know,
I say early childhood.
Oh yeah, well again, I'm not, you know, like but I totally agree with you. But I mean, for me in middle school, I want to start them out earlier. And again, you know, the whole idea that having the uncomfortable conversations, and again, they're not uncomfortable with me because I have no problem having this conversation. I want kids to say them. You know, I want to feel their emotion. I want to feel their grief and their pain and their hurt, because I think it's important for them to be heard, because I think they feel like when they talk, nobody hears them, not just because they're kids, but because they're African-American kids. And I like them to be very open and talk about it. And, you know, it's actually, you know, really, you know, fun for me to do, because I find it to be very engaging to have conversations with the kids. And most of my kids, while our school is in the middle of some beautiful neighborhoods, most of our kids are bussed in from just outside those neighborhoods. So, I mean, you know, just to show the variety, you know, last year I taught a girl whose father just won the Super Bowl last year. And then I have a kid who was homeless. So that's that, you know, you talk about two different views of the world. It's amazing to hear those, you know, those stories as well, because even if in their community, you see there's such a disparity as well. And it's interesting to hear the views of somebody from one end of the spectrum to the other. But I just want to be able to have as many things available for me to give to them and have them, you know, take advantage of. And I think our educators, and like I said, while our student body is 90% or so African American, most of our teachers are white. So, well, then, you know, then again, that's that disparity.
That we gotta clean that up. And when I say clean it up, that is a problem. That's a
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. Now
You
I will
know?
say this: we have made some huge strides in my school
Right.
to do that. However, in general, there aren't many people entering the teaching field in general, and there's even fewer African Americans entering it. And our
Mhm.
school's a little difficult. And again, it depends the attitude when you walk into it.
Mhm.
Many of our younger African American male teachers just can't handle it. And like I have a guy who's been teaching for 2 years, and he said, I just can't stand being around these kids. I can't deal with it. And he's leaving after 2 years.
Well,
And I'm like, well, what's I don't know what's going on there. And it just seems to be struggling. I don't know if it's I just don't know. I can't figure it out
yeah.
because we seem to lose many of our young African American teachers quicker than we lose other teachers. And I'm not sure what's happening there, what's going on there. And I'd love to be able to figure that out because there are some good people and some good teachers, but they just I don't know. I really don't know what the issue there is.
So, I mean, even during segregation, like education in the African American community is so important. And so there are such incredibly gifted, phenomenal Black teachers in this country. And so I, I don't know. I wrote the name of your school down, and I don't know where exactly your school is located, but it is in Baltimore County, which is it's a diverse area. I would say
And
that
again,
before, well, you know, it's Maryland. Maryland
it is
is
extremely diverse.
yeah.
Right.
So
We're in the southwest corner, so majority of our students are African American. But if you go to the opposite side of the county, it's
yeah,
completely flipped. So
yeah,
it's a weird county because as you go around it, it definitely is extremely diverse.
yeah. I would say that I don't know how many African American teachers have gone through your school program to resign with those types of feelings that they just can't handle it. I that, you know, if it's like one or two, well, I mean, out of an entire school body, I'm sure other people have resigned as well with those same feelings.
Oh yeah,
Um,
especially
yeah, so,
lately.
so yeah. So I think that, you know, and not to say you know, school resources and all of those things are a serious issue. I think when it comes to when you see a school that is predominantly African American and the school faculty that is predominantly white, from the outside looking in, and even from the inside being inside, because being a student, I've experienced that type of learning dynamic. And you know this, it's a red flag. It's a red flag saying
Mhm.
that what are the internal practices that that hinders the school from being racially and ethnically diverse. It's like, and representation matters. We know this, like representation matters. It's
Mhm.
important that the students see themselves in positions of power as educators, as teachers, you know? So I would say, right, if any of your colleagues are listening, first of all, it's incredible the work that you're doing in that school system, in that school, because that's going to have incredible impact in the lives of young people. But I would hope that the administrators at your school, and even with the support of the faculty, really begin interrogating their own diversity practices, their own hiring practices. They're like, how can we cultivate an environment where we can onboard and retain Black teachers, you know,
Mhm.
and that is critical. That's so important. If you're gonna be raising, and I'm gonna say raising, because they are there more hours of the week, than at home,
Oh yeah.
or just as many. If you're gonna be raising these kids, representation matters. Okay. You like, if you are telling these kids to be proud, empowered Black people, future leaders, right? You need to model that in your own administrative practices. You need to be that is so important.
And again, I think we're doing well at recruiting. We're struggling with retaining right now. So I mean, 2 out of 3 of our school administration are African American, so that becomes a very big part of their hiring. So again, but the pool of teacher candidates in general has really dried up. Nobody wants to teach. Nobody wants to teach anymore. I mean, even the schools around us like Towson that are putting out teachers, it's just getting really thin out there. And that's why I think it's so important for us to retain those teachers that we do have. And like you said, students need those role models as well. And I just don't think we're. And again, it's not for lack of trying for our school, especially. Maybe other schools aren't like that, but our schools, I mean, that's really kind of what we've been doing. And then I just feel like we're just not able to retain teachers in general, but especially younger African American teachers who just don't want to teach anymore. And and maybe it's just the nature of the career. I'm not sure, but anyways, I'm gonna stop taking over the entire thing here. Let somebody else jump in here if they want to jump in and ask a question.
Well, Richard, let's share each other's contact information. I'm happy for the museum to be a resource. We do offer teacher trainings, and we would love to be a resource for your class. You can't change the world, but you can change a little corner of it. And it sounds like you're making really great change with your students.
I'm not looking to change the world, but I guarantee you, if I can change enough kids, it will eventually change the world. And that's what I tell. It starts with your generation. I know you're young, but you start this generation to keep going. I said sometimes I know it feels like there's not much progress, and we do seem to take 1 step forward and 2 steps back, as I said, but I guarantee, I'm mid-50s right now, so certainly I've seen it improve, but we're not there yet. We're not even close to being there. And I said, your generation's got to be the one that keeps pushing it. Okay, so hopefully, one student at a time, right?
Yeah, one student. Exactly.
All right. Well, I put my my information in the chat.
Okay.
Yes, I did. So I'm going to let anybody else want to jump in. I know we have one more person jump in, and that was Emily. She jumped in. So I don't know if she may have a question or want to jump in here and talk a little bit. Feel free to.
I'm sorry if you see my finger. And I just sent you an email, Richard, with so you'll have my contact information.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
I realize that we might be concluding very soon, but Richard, I just wanted to also reply, although I know the question wasn't directed to me, but I do think that, and I mean, I'm learning too, but I do think that the language that you're using, like there are microaggressions involved, but first you were saying like they can't handle it, referring to young Black teachers, especially Black male teachers, but then later you're saying like we at the school, and I think maybe that there might be small things that might be an issue, and I mean I'm learning too, but it's also, I guess you can look at what support is the school offering these new teachers, because teaching is really hard. Being an educator is really hard, especially the first few years. And like, how are the teachers getting resourced? Are they getting enough, response from counseling or guidance or other teachers? So I think, I just want to say, like, I think it might be small things that So I guess I'm just saying, I think the language that, you know, you and other white educators are using might, well, it could be maybe something you're not aware of, but I do think that that's something that the impetus could be on the institution rather than just the students. And I mean, it's that way with lots of stuff in all public schools, but just wanted to say that. And I
Yeah,
haven't
yeah,
written this
yeah.
down, but
Certainly.
I
I
did.
mean,
Thank you,
yeah,
Carolyn. Yeah.
yeah. I have to say you're definitely right there because there are so many different things going on there. I mean, it's not like, I can't say it's one thing or another. I can only reflect on what our most recent teacher said. He said he loved the staff, felt like everybody supported him, but he just didn't really enjoy the children we had there. And I mean, he struggled from the very beginning, and I don't think he's probably not teacher material, at least from the outset. And I think he just realized that. But I mean, you're right. There's so many different dynamics going on there, and it could be any one of 100 different things or a combination. Just in general, teaching is very difficult. And for some people, they realize, luckily early on, it's just not for them.
I think what she was saying, Carolyn, I'm just going to piggyback off of you real quick, specifically was the statement of they don't want to teach here, when that is a generalization, and that could definitely be deemed as a microaggression. So if I were someone listening to this, I would think, well, that's not an environment that I would want to go to, because I'm not, I'm being racially generalized and almost stereotyped, that Black teachers don't want to be here. So it's kind of creating this like master status or whatever, that Black teachers don't want to teach here, when it sounds like there may not be a support system for new teachers. And if that language is kind of being used in the school environment, yeah, that could definitely be taxing, emotionally taxing, on a teacher of color working at your school. So I think that specifically, I want to be specific. I think that's what she was saying. So yeah, we learn every day. Thank you, Carolyn.
Yep. Yeah, thank you. I think Emily has a question. Go ahead.
Thanks. First, thank you so much for coming to talk with us. And my apologies, I might have missed, I certainly missed stuff earlier because I was late. I apologize. So I teach in a college locally, and we've obviously, also had problems recruiting a diverse faculty, but we've managed to do some excellent recruiting, I think. And we have problems sometimes retaining good faculty members in every demographic, but and I've worked, I've done a lot of reading and studying of, what we need to do to support our faculty of color. And sometimes it's hard to get buy-in from our administrators on that, and to say, look, here you've asked this colleague of ours to, sit on all these committees and to chair this, African American Studies program. And you also have to understand that she is serving as a mentor on an informal basis to all these students who are in her office all the time, because she is the person, representation matters, as you say, and she is the person who, they want to talk to. They don't want to come to my office. They don't want to come to, Professor Harrison's office because he doesn't look like them. They want to come to her office and tell her about what they're experiencing on campus when suddenly there's an outburst of, racial graffiti and stuff like that. And we've had some terrible problems like that over the past couple of years not this past year on campus because nobody was on campus, but but the year before. And so our faculty of color, shoulder an inordinate burden. And it's not only do they then have to bear the students' burden, but it's hard on them too, obviously. And then put 2020 on top of that. And obviously they need extra support. At least I assume they do. And that's what I read. And so we're trying, as colleagues to be extra supportive, but then the administration wants to treat us all alike. Do you have any ideas for like how we as colleagues can try to break through that impasse with our bosses who like just don't get it? I mean, we continue to advocate, and that's one thing we can do, obviously, and we can be good colleagues, and we can say, I see you, how are you doing? What can I do to help? I know it's hard for you. So that's the things, that I've come up with. But
let me just say, stop. That is meaningful. That's not the solution to the entire problem.
No.
I've been a diversity hire, and just having someone come to me and say, are you okay? Is everything okay? I know this, just speaking truth to the environment is great. Yeah, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. I said thank you. Yeah, but
so I would say this. I am happy to connect you with the executive director of an organization called Challenging Racism. And her name is Alicia McLeod. And so I think that that organization in particular, and can help you devise a strategy. And so, yeah, it's really different. It's really difficult when you're working for a system that has like an oppressive governing body. Because if you don't have that, and I'm using governing because I'm coming from the nonprofit sector, so I think of like boards and stuff like that. But if you don't have that top buy-in, it just makes things so difficult. So you could go public. I mean, I actually did research at I'm doing a public art project at GW University in Washington, DC. And so I'm doing this mural. Hopefully it goes through, but a mural of Leah Brock McCartney, who was the first African-American woman to graduate from their School of Law. Now, there's not a tremendous amount of like photos of Leah Brock McCartney in the public domain, but what I did was I just started researching her life, like, and what the things that were going on in her life, around in her life, and it was just incredible. So I say that to say the mural will be on a building that was named after the president of GW at the time. His name was Owen Martin. Yes, Owen Martin. And he was a segregationalist. And it was documented that he said publicly that there will be that GW, which was the last university to remain segregated in Washington, D.C., that it will remain segregated and no Black students will go here. So what did the student body do? He terrorized the faculty, anyone who was liberal at the time, because there was activism going on and picketing. Most notably, who was that actress who played in Casablanca? Who's the actress?
Yeah.
Who's the actress? Her. Ingrid
Bergman.
Yeah. So she actually yes, Ingrid Bergman. So she wrote to the paper, and because they were going to perform a play there. I can't think of the name of the play. On campus, but she didn't know that the school was segregated. It was in their new performing arts building called Lisner Hall, and she wrote an open letter or something like that. She went public saying that this is terrible. And so people started picketing GW, saying that the school needed to desegregate. Specifically, I think they started with Lesnar Hall, desegregating Lesnar Hall, and then it kind of reverberated throughout the campus as far as desegregating the school. I may be getting things mixed up, but I say this to say the power was with the press.
Yeah.
Faculty went to the press, students went to the press, and really it was that external pressure that made the school basically desegregate.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that definitely helped. So I would say to you and your faculty, you all have, is the faculty, right? Am I?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So you all have power, use your voice, I will definitely get you in contact with Alicia. She may say something different. I doubt it, because she's on it. And go to the press. If people aren't shaping up and students and faculty are suffering because of it, well, things got to change.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
I don't know that the things we're talking about would be things that the press would be sympathetic to. I mean,
You think?
well, it's things like, for instance, getting a lower course load, for example. And the fact,
Okay.
the public doesn't, they don't think, they think faculty don't work enough anyway. But, that kind of thing. It's the nuances of who holds the better perks in the faculty and who has higher workloads. It's that kind of balancing, and it's has to do with the benefits and workload of faculty, and how we distribute those, and who does certain jobs, and this is what I'm thinking of particularly. And there are other issues too, but that kind of thing is what's on my mind right this week in particular, as we're dealing with some stuff. And it's just, it's hard to watch someone who has given a huge amount and borne a lot of burdens be told, no, we're not going to do anything for you. And it just seems so tone deaf.
So is there a racial issue, an issue of racism showing up with the workload and the job assignments? I guess I missed that.
I think there's I think there is, but it's very subtle. It's
Okay.
It's because everybody's workload is different. And there's an unwillingness to recognize that someone who's African American and dealing with all the African American issues on campus, that's a higher workload in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And therefore it's.
Wait, say that part again. You said.
Someone who is an African American colleague who is chairing African American studies in the current atmosphere, and therefore doing, handling all the informal mentoring of students who are in stress because of what's happening on campus and off campus.
Yeah.
And grown that program in the current atmosphere, when 2 years ago the administration tried to close that program. Let's not even talk about that. And that in itself is deserving of the golden ticket of the course release, which is what we all are striving for all the time, and didn't get it. So it's just, it's a little thing. It's not a little thing, it's a huge thing actually. And it's hard if you're not in the atmosphere to sort of see that that's so I think that the going to the press is probably not, in this case, the solution, but sometimes sometimes it is.
Yeah, and I'm not, listen, I'm not saying
I agree.
there. You have to have a plan.
Yeah.
And I think that in talking with folks like Alicia, I see Carolyn put a resource link in the chat.
Yeah, I see that. That's great.
Figuring out what you want your action items collectively with the faculty, what you want your action, what the problem is, diagnose the problem, and creating an action plan on how to make God, the environment safe
Yeah.
physically, emotionally
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
students,
Yeah.
I think is primary. And that might be adding more resources and concerted effort and creating support systems for students. Because one teacher, I mean, they can't do
Yeah.
it all. I mean, it's
Right.
great to have that type of representation
Yeah.
and that type of support. But you know,
And
it seems like there's a lot there to
right
tease
now,
out.
I should say that it's not one teacher alone. We have, you
Yeah.
know, multiple faculty of color on the campus, African American faculty, and they are all doing,
Yeah.
great work. And
Yeah.
the students do come first, and that is, our primary concern. So
Yeah.
these resources, thank you. I will definitely look into, if you could connect me with the challenging racism executive director, that would be great. And thank you. Is that Caroline who put that up there? Humans of Higher Ed. Thank you. I will definitely look into that too. Thanks.
So I guess Emil, if I
It's
can,
Emily. Yeah.
it's Emily. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that's okay.
If I could leave for kind of, you said a lot, and I just wanted to kind of like be clear. You are looking for the administration to be supportive of the emotional, to address the blatant racism that has been showing up on campus. Is that, is that okay?
Yeah.
And then also,
and they, I would say they are not bad at the blatant racism, but they are not good at the subtle racism. And so I've lost my window here, trying to get back. Oh no, here we go. Zoom. There we go. Okay, sorry. Yeah, they're not bad at the blatant racism. They've become really much better at that and quicker to respond and quicker to see it, but they are not good at subtle racism. I think they are on a journey of, the learning curve, and they're getting better, but they still are not good at supporting faculty. They're much better at students. They're not so good at faculty. And I think they are just, especially because of the pandemic, they feel like, well, everybody's expendable.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'll put you in contact with Alicia.
That'd be great. I would love to talk with her.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you have a lot going on. You have a lot going on over there, and
Yeah, we do.
Those subtle microaggressions and those, I mean,
we have more than
subtle racism that is
Yeah.
dangerous.
It is. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So I'm sure Alicia can help you kind of tease that out and strategize how to approach the administration. I'm still a little unclear. I'm so sorry. I'm all about clarity. I don't like leaving things even, confused, but it sounds like you are trying to make workload equitable, because it seems like, was it Black teachers or
right,
are getting more work? Or
I think the administration wants it to be equal, and I want it to be equitable.
Right.
And I want some of the justice work that Black teachers are doing to be counted more, and so do they. And it's not, and they're not, and the administration isn't willing to count the justice work. I think that's
okay.
And I think that would be a good summary, but I don't want to spend time trying to tease out the details, because I don't think the details are really relevant to the whole group,
Yeah.
And I don't expect you to solve the problem, but just, I think this is a great resource, and I think the other resource is a great resource, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, all right. Well, I love connecting people. I look forward to connecting you to Alicia, and I think we're over our limit.
Oh,
I don't know, Richard, I don't know if you want to keep all this.
Oh, it's okay.
Way over time.
I don't mind at all. I think it's a good conversation. We'll just keep recording. And
Okay.
like I said, it's okay if we're over. We're pretty much, I guess we're pretty much close to wrapping up unless anybody else has
Yeah.
any other comments or questions.
Well, I would, if you don't mind, I'd like to close and say thank you all thank you, Ron, for inviting me today. Thank you, Richard, for facilitating the conversation. Thank you, Emily and Carolyn, for your great questions. Thank you, Carolyn, for adding the resource link. If you don't mind, Emily, if you can put your email address
oh,
in
right.
the chat, I'll be sure to send an email introduction. And thank you everyone for it's a small but mighty group tonight, but thank you all for attending. Be sure to check out the Banneker-Douglass Museum. You can follow us on IG and Facebook. We do some really great programs. We serve as a platform for experts, educators, artists, creatives, and community voices. Our next program will be April 20th, which will be free to the public. And it is an anti-racism training confronting the history of racism and bigotry towards Black people in the United States. So I hope you can attend. And please enjoy the rest of your evening. Please be safe. Please treat each other well. Read, and stay connected. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And everybody have a good night.
Thank
All right,
you
you
very
too.
much.
You're welcome.
Bye-bye.
Okay. You're welcome. Bye.